Welcome to this week's episode of So It's Not Just Me. I'm your host, Joanna, and today I'm joined by Em, and we are going to talk about something that's really important and something that's come to life in my family as well, and that I'm learning about. So hopefully today I'm going to have a good education, and hopefully we'll have some conversations about that people will relate to. So with that, would you like to introduce yourself?
I certainly will. So, my name is Em. I've come on today to talk about everything about special educational needs as I have two children. So, I've got Lucas, who's 13. He's currently diagnosed. So, he was diagnosed at the age of 5 with autism, and then he was diagnosed at the age of 6 with ADHD. And I'm now on that path now with my daughter, who's age 9. So, she's on the pathway for the autism and the ADHD. So we're just navigating through waiting times and just all the usual stuff that comes with it, basically.
Yeah, and these waiting times are just crazy. It's like
They really are. Like,
sometimes I've heard it's years and months.
yeah, it is. So when Lucas got diagnosed, I was on about this to somebody else the other day, funnily enough. And when Lucas got diagnosed, I think the whole process from start to finish was something like 8 to 10 months. And I
Wow.
remember at the time thinking, oh my God, like that is ages. But fast forward to today, currently, Madison's been on the ADHD waiting list for over a year. And I had
Wow.
a phone call during the summer holidays to say that the autism has now been pushed back for another year. So she'll have been on the waiting list for around about 2 years for the autism assessment.
That's terrible. Like these poor
Mhm.
little kids.
And
That's
it's in the meantime as well. It's just like a lot of a lot of people, like schools and stuff, won't put the right support in place until they've got a piece of paper that says the child has got autism and ADHD, and that's what's wrong. So the child is then left struggling, and the way that they deal with it is like the completely the wrong way, because it's like, oh well, we'll send them to head teacher and they'll sort them out, and or it leads to like suspensions, or it just leads to, I feel like there's a label put on the parent almost, as if like, oh, we won't believe you until we've got that piece of paper. And then it's
yeah.
almost like you're left then in like this catch-22 situation of thinking, well, okay. And I remember going through this journey with Lucas. So when he was diagnosed all those years ago and we got the piece of paper, it was almost like a sigh of relief. And we were like, right, this is it. This is it. This is going to unlock everything, thinking that so much is going to get put in place, but actually it was quite the opposite. So
Oh
when we got the
really?
piece of paper to say that Lucas had got, or so he got diagnosed with autism first, it was a case of, right, okay, well we'll put him on a my support plan. So that's like the beginning of the journey, but that didn't really give him the support that he needed. And it was almost like you were in a bit of a limbo situation of like, right, okay, so what now?
Yeah. And does he? This is only from what I've been reading. Like, as I say, I mentioned before the podcast started, I don't really know much about this subject. I don't have kids. My niece, who does have additional needs, I've only really spent a couple of weeks with her, with me being living over here, and I only know like secondhand. Do the kids get labelled as naughty rather than having a look at what the issues are?
Very much so. Very much
That
so. It's even though if they have got the diagnosis or when they get the diagnosis, I feel like there's there's so much stigma around it, and there's not enough education around it.
mm,
So even now, there's a lot of like prejudgment from people, and your child
yeah,
is, without a shadow of a doubt, labelled that the naughty, the rude, the arrogant, um, like distant is another one. I mean, we went on a sponsored walk last week, and my son, so obviously to look at my child, and this is the classic saying, "Oh well, he doesn't look autistic." Well, how do you want it
it's so many
autistic
different
to
levels.
look? Um,
Yeah,
and it's only when you start to learn a little bit more about him. So what he was doing, and this is quite common with children that have got autism, is he's got no like social awareness. He's got no like space awareness of anything. So when we were going on this sponsored walk, he was basically up the backside of somebody
Right.
else who's in front of us. And obviously she was like, first of all, she was, kind of like glancing behind a little bit. And I mean, I was quite some distance away because he'd stormed off in front. Because again, the autism mind is, we're doing this, this is what we need to do, and everything else like goes out the window. So it was quite a little bit of distance away from me, so I managed to catch up to him, and I could see that she was starting to get a bit, agitated and a little bit annoyed of like, why is this child literally stuck to the backside of
Yeah.
me? And she said something to a friend at the side of her. So obviously at this point, I'd managed to catch up to Lucas, and I'm saying to him like, "Look, we'll just go round them." And he's like, "No, I don't want to go round them. They should speed up." Again, the autism trait coming out. And obviously, I managed to get him to go round the people, and I just said to the lady like, "I'm really sorry, he's got autism." And she was like, "Oh, he doesn't look autistic." And it's just, it's like, it's that prejudgment, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's a really difficult one because obviously every autistic child and any child that's got ADHD all present very, very differently. And
Yes.
it's that common line of, oh well, he doesn't look autistic, but if there was a child in a wheelchair, no comment would have been made about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess as well, there's these TV shows and things where it's like the dating shows where it says, oh, there's a person who's got autism, and it's like the most extreme autism you can imagine, and that's what they people then have in their head as this is what autism looks like, and
Mhm.
they don't think about the bigger picture of other people. um when I was doing some research, it said that I think it was about 1.5 million kids in England have some sort of additional educational needs, which is about 17%. And in the US, about 7.5 million students, which is about 15%. So to me, it's shocking that schools don't have something else in place, because 15, 17%, that's a big percentage
Mhm.
of things. So why isn't there more training for these schools and teachers to help? Because that's what they're meant to be doing. They're meant to be educating people. So
Mhm.
just because your kid has autism or ADHD, they shouldn't be getting any less of an education,
Yeah, I totally agree.
in my
And
opinion.
I think the child, again, it comes down to the child and how they present at school. And the term is masking. Now,
Right,
my son, he couldn't really mask. So really from an early age, like I said, he was really early for majority of boys, because some boys don't get diagnosed till a little bit later on. Girls are even worse. Like girls are really good at masking, and that's the journey that I've been on with my daughter. But for Lucas, he very much, with what you see with Lucas is what you get with Lucas. So if Lucas doesn't want to do something, he won't do it.
right,
And because he, from a very early age, was presenting the challenging behaviours at school, and he was academically behind, and I think that's the key bit there, academically behind. Like he
yeah,
wasn't up with his peer groups. By the age of, when he was in year three, he was still working at a year one level. So there was a
right,
massive gap. That's when school stepped in. School then decided from like the year four that they would then put the EHCP in place. So an EHCP is basically the highest form of support that a child can get. And with
right,
that, it's an educational healthcare plan. And with that, basically, they get a pot of money. So they get more money for the child. So that means that it can fund for a one to one. If the child needs that, it means that they can have extra interventions. It means that basically that pot of money goes on the child of whatever they feel the child will benefit from. But like I said, Lucas didn't get that until year four, because school kept saying to me that, oh, he's not far enough behind. He'll catch up, he's not far enough behind. But by that point, we'd had a 2 year gap.
yeah,
But like I said, because he was presenting in school and he wasn't masking and he was more challenging, like ripping pages out of books, like when the teacher was talking, like he'd refuse to move off the carpet. At one point, the teacher, this was like going back to like reception age, the teacher said that Lucas had picked up a train track piece and he was running towards one of the children with this piece in his hand like this, and they was really unsure whether or not he was going to throw the train track, or he was actually going to hit the child with the train
Right.
track piece. And that was the start of it. That was the start of it, where they were like, right, look, okay, we feel like this child is presenting with autism and we feel like he's got ADHD. We're going to refer him. Because like after that there was like other things like eating his food with his fingers. There was things like he would not interact with the children. He would play like alongside them but not actually interact. But again, all these characteristics was present right from nursery, and it wasn't
Right.
picked up. So it was only until he was in the school where he was currently, before he's now, in the primary school, where they started picking up all of this. But you see, my daughter's journey has been completely different. So because again around about the similar age 5. So my daughter was born premature, so she was born at 29 weeks premature. So she was tiny, she was £2.16. And she spent a lot of time in the ICU. So she was 9 weeks in hospital. She had a lot of problems, bless her, like heart murmur. She had to come home on oxygen. Um, Her lungs obviously weren't formed properly. She had to have 2 blood transfusions. Like it was a really scary time.
Gosh.
Um, and a lot of the issues that we was having with Madison. So obviously I started to identify, because I think the thing is when you've got a child that's been diagnosed with autism, you start seeing the traits. You start
Right.
realizing, okay, hang on a minute, this is a sign, there's something not quite right here. When you've got your first one, it's very, very difficult because you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's one of the questions that I've always been asked before, like, well, did you not know this? Well, no, because what you don't know, you don't know. Like, you don't know what you're looking out for. You're a brand new mum. Like, nobody tells you, oh, look for X, Y, or Z. This is a sign of, autism or additional needs. So obviously, then when I had Madison, it was a case of, hang on a minute, she's walking on her tiptoes. Like that. That's a sign. There's a sign there that she's
Okay.
tiptoes. She started hand flapping. When she was around about 3 years old, we went to the pub to go for a meal. And I remember, obviously, again, stereotypical, the child gets the blue plate, the boy gets the blue plate, and the girl gets the pink plate.
Right.
So my daughter got a pink plate. She didn't want the pink plate. She wanted the blue plate. So because she didn't have the blue plate with the blue knife and fork, she threw herself on the floor and started screaming and crying until eventually she got the blue plate.
Right.
So again, a lot of these issues was there, and then I mentioned it obviously to the school, and it was, oh, maybe she's just copying her brother. Maybe she's copying her brother. She's spinning around, and I'm like, her brother doesn't spin around. Like
Yeah.
two very different children. And it was like, oh well, we'll put the referral in. So this was when she was 5. We'll put the referral in, but obviously we don't see what you're seeing. So anyway, it did go through, but unfortunately, when we went for when she was age 5, there wasn't enough evidence because Madison very much was masking to a certain degree in school, but also I feel like she was like compared to her brother and saying, well, she's just
Right.
copying the traits of what her brother is doing when she really wasn't, because they're two very separate children and doing different things. And then when we got there, it very much is a tick box exercise. And if that child ticks all 5 sections, they've got autism. Now,
Right.
unfortunately for Madison, they identified that she'd got sensory and she'd got communication, but it wasn't enough to diagnose her at that time, at the age of 5, that she's got autism. So
Right.
then, fast forward another 4 years, because Madison's now 9 years old, I've had to start obviously the process all over again. the only good thing about it, which it isn't really in a way, because you don't want your child to be struggling at school and you don't want your child to be labeled the naughty child and start separating from her friendships, but she's not able to mask at school anymore. So
Right.
we're having the outbursts, and school are now saying, right, okay, yeah, we can see she's not great at friendships, so she's hurting other children because they're very possessive over their friends. So
Right.
nobody else is allowed to play with them. If she's asked a question in school and she's told to do something, Madison doesn't like that. So we have the anger, we have the shouting and the screaming and the hiding under the desks, drawing on the carpets, running out of school, hitting the teachers. So Madison's completely gone the other way. But then,
Right.
along with that journey, I feel as if like the school are then saying, "Oh, it must have been. Have you said anything to her? We've noticed a massive difference in her behaviour at school. So have you said something to her?"
It's like you
It's
can't win.
Yeah, so it's almost like we're parent blamed. We're parent blamed continuously. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents that are listening to this that are in the same situation. We are very much gaslit that all the
Yeah.
time. It's parent blamed and it's very gaslit. And the services where you feel that they should give you the access and the support, and the child really desperately needs it, they try and find a loophole to then say, oh, well, it must be the parent, or it must be, put them on another parenting course. It must be to do with their parenting skills. And it's very much parent blame, unfortunately. And I know a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to be like, oh my God, we're in the
Yeah,
same
and
room.
it's so unfair because you can hear and you can see physically how hard parents are trying to get the best for their kids so the kids can have a proper
Mm-hmm.
education, as normal as education as they can deal with. And it's crazy. Like my niece, it's funny you should say that your daughter was born at 29 weeks. So was my niece, both of my nieces. One of them was like £2.8, I think. I'm not too sure how big the other one was. But 29 weeks seems to be, yeah. But she goes to swimming lessons and she's not very good with rejection or people saying no.
Yeah.
Um, if you say no, or it's time to get out, or we don't want to play with you, she kicks off.
Mm-hmm.
And she's such a loving little kid. And you can see how hard my sister's trying to get and advocate for her daughter. So saying it's the parents' fault is just the most horrendous thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely ridiculous.
It
What
definitely
to
is
say?
because, oh, sorry, because I was just going to
No, go
say
on.
it definitely is because it's obviously it's a very isolating, it can be isolating. I've learned that it can be isolating, but obviously throughout my journey I've found different like support groups and like agencies that you can go to for help, and then like communities that have
Yeah,
got similar parents that are in the same situation, so it's not as lonely. But I think when you're trying to navigate this journey, it's very difficult because not only have you got the pressure of obviously advocating for your child, but then on top of that, you're somehow trying to balance everyday life.
yeah,
And then on top of that, it's like the pressure of judgment, and it's the pressure of just actually surviving a day. And I feel a lot of
yeah,
parents are in survival mode because we don't know how to operate out of the survival mode. We seem to have lost our identity of who we are as a parent, well, who we are before we were a parent. And I feel like a lot of parents then just allow their mental health to suffer as a byproduct. But then
yeah,
again, it's the catch 22 because if you mention that you've got mental health problems, like you're suffering with your mental health, you're feeling a bit low mood, that's when you open up to the judgment and you open up a whole can of worms, because that then can be led to, all right, okay, so it's your parenting then and it's your mental health.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've been personally labelled with that, so I know how it feels. and it just feels like continuously everything is a fight. You're fighting all of the time.
It's just not a nice feeling to have. What what does like a normal or somewhat normal day to day look like to your household?
So a normal day to day, it's just, I mean, obviously every day is just different, really.
Right.
Um, you never know. I think that's the thing, and I think that's the hardest thing because if you had a child that was in a wheelchair, you would know that that child is going to be in a wheelchair every day, and their days would look exactly the same.
Yeah.
But with a child that's got autism and ADHD, you never know how your day is going to look because the slightest little thing can actually, be the tipping
Flip it.
point. And
Yeah.
it could be something so minute, like, for example, the other morning, my daughter was getting ready for school and we were on time, things were going really, really well. And it came to her putting a bag on and a bottle had leaked in a bag. And then it was just utter chaos because it was meltdown. And the thing is with Madison, when she's having a meltdown, there's nothing that you can say, there's nothing that you can do. She doesn't want to be held. She just has to cry it out.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult. But then again with Madison, she can then go from that to then be, right, okay, let's go.
Right.
So it's almost like, a bit of a juggling act because you don't actually know how she's going to be. Whereas with my son Lucas, like, I know exactly how that had set him up for the day. Like, he would be stuck in that mood. And again, I think this is down to the ADHD side where they really struggle with their emotions. It's a massive outburst of emotions and they don't know how to regulate and they don't know what they need to do in order to be able to see things differently. And like what you mentioned about the rejection, that is massively part of ADHD because they are sensitive to criticism. Like any little thing, like they're really good at reading people, and the slightest little shift in energy of, it might be just that you didn't say morning to them, like that's rejection to them because they feel
Yeah.
like it's a personal attack on them. Um, so I mean, everyday life for me is just you don't know what you're going to get. I always remember the saying that my dad used to say, and I feel like he was preparing me for SEN life. And it was always expect the unexpected, and that is
Yeah.
pretty much what it's like being a SEN parent because sometimes it's you can plan your day to a T. You can have all the visual cues. You can set your child up as if to explain to them, right, this is what's going to happen and then we're going to do this and this is the time, and and the slightest little thing like McDonald's being closed,
Yeah.
when you've told that child that as a treat that they can go to McDonald's, or the worst part is when they change the menu. So if they
Oh
change,
no.
yeah, if they change anything in
Yeah.
their burgers, if they change anything in the chicken nuggets, like my child Lucas can pick up that nugget and without even tasting it, he'll know that it's different.
It's like a superpower.
Mm, it is
It really
definitely like
is.
a superpower. But then it's frustrating as a parent because it's,
Yeah.
you could have been having the most fabulous day and then that slightest little thing then just kind of like sets you back because obviously you don't know what to expect.
Yeah. So you said that you've got the EHCP set up for Lucas and you're in the process of doing that for Madison now.
Hmm.
How proud did you feel when you managed to get that?
Um,
Was it more relief than pride?
yeah, I think it was more of a relief. However, again, I feel like there's a lot of stigma with the EHCP because
Okay.
when I got, so Lucas was in year 5, so the same age now that Madison's in, when he got his EHCP. And I was on the understanding of when he got that EHCP, that that gives you like a fast track almost to whatever school you felt was the right fit for your child, and
Right.
it was guaranteed. That's what I thought that it was going to give for my Lucas. Um, and obviously, that wasn't the case. The case is that, yes, you do get to put in your preference of the school that you wanted. So I knew quite quickly when Lucas was in year five the struggles that we were having and how academically behind he was and how reliant he was on other teachers regulating him because he didn't actually understand any of his emotions. He didn't know what to do with them. And he was so that far behind academically. I just knew that a mainstream high school wasn't going to be a right fit for Lucas.
Right.
So obviously, when I got the CHCP, I was like, yes, like this is going to give me the opportunity now, so I can go find a perfect setting for Lucas that I know he's going to absolutely thrive in. So obviously, it got to year six for him, and with the EHCP, you do get advanced timing. So you are able, I think it's October, that you put your request in of where you want your child to go, and I think you find out the end of January the placement that you've got. So I think you're like 2 months ahead of everybody else, basically.
Okay.
And I just remember obviously putting in where I wanted my child to go, and it was a resource. Now, in where I live, the resources are so far and in between, it's unreal. Like, we have only got 3 resources at the moment in the Wakefield area. So, and with that, there's only 2 spaces per year group.
Oh
So you're
gosh.
talking 6 places. There has been talk that there's going to be another school. Again, it's only talk. We don't know if it's actually true. But there is talk that there is going to be another resource opening. But again, that only opens up again 2 spaces per year group. So that's where I wanted my child to go. I'd gone to the visit and I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be perfect for Lucas because with a resource, you've got access to the mainstream, but then you've got access to like the small unit where they do the regulation work, they do the sensory work, like they're with the child. So it may be that they've got one staff member for like 2 children, which would have been
Right.
absolutely fine for Lucas, and they would go over to the building with them. They would sit with them in the class and basically do what the teacher was already doing at primary school. And if they could see that Lucas was struggling, they'd be like, right, come on, Lucas, let's go back to the base. And they would take the child and they would do the interventions with them.
Right.
They would teach them life skills, so like tying shoelaces because Lucas couldn't even do shoelaces. It'd be like telling the time. So I remember going away and I was like, yes, got an EHCP in place. That's where I want him to go. I'm going to get him into there. And then I just remember the phone call that I got through, and it was like, oh, we're just letting you know that he's been allocated a mainstream setting with nothing. And I
Oh
was like,
no.
are you absolutely kidding me? And there was like, no, that's what he's been given. So at that point, I was like, there's no way. There is absolutely no way. I mean, he wouldn't even go to the transitions. So how on earth the council thought that he was going to be able to access a mainstream setting with nothing, and he wouldn't even walk through the door? Like, I have zero clue. So obviously I had to file for a tribunal. So I filed for a tribunal. We managed to get the tribunal expedited, so it was done quicker because of the transition that was due to take place. But unfortunately, I didn't get the resource. So the council played dirty, basically, and I found that they don't do the things that are right for the child. And this is what I'm always saying. Like, I always feel like we're fighting for our children because surely the person that knows the child best is the parent, not the
Yeah.
council that have never met the child. They don't even know what he looks like. So then for them to say, oh, actually, no, he'll be absolutely fine, is absolutely bonkers because it's like, well, you've not even met him. You've not even spent a day with him. You know, if you
Yeah.
actually spent 10 minutes with him and you saw what it was like in class, and you could see like from the outside of like how mute he was, and he wouldn't speak to people, and he was getting himself into trouble in the playground because it was unstructured times. Like, you'd be able to see this, and obviously with high school comes a whole set of different challenges for the child to navigate through.
Yeah.
So it was just absolutely bonkers. So yeah, I went to tribunal. I didn't win. I did get better than what we were going to be given. So I did get given the mainstream that was attached. Well, the resource is part of the mainstream, but he didn't have access to the resource. But I did secure him a full time 1-to-1. So it
Right.
was a little bit better than what I would have got. But in my heart of hearts, I just knew that it wasn't going to be the right fit. And then I just remember I had a lovely lady called Corinne, from West Yorkshire ADHD Support Group, and she was absolutely amazing. And she supported me through the entire process of the tribunal. And I honestly, genuinely wouldn't have known how I would have got through it if it hadn't been for her, especially with like all the legalities and the,
Yeah.
some of the questioning that they ask you, because I almost feel as if it's like they're trying to trip you up to give them the false answer.
Yeah.
Um, and I just remember ringing her up, and I was like, "Have you seen the paperwork?" And she's like, "Yeah, I have." But she's like, "We know it's not going to work. So let's give it till Christmas. So let him start in September. We'll get him in on a reduced timetable because they've got to put something in place because he's not had any transitions. He doesn't know anybody. And we'll give it till Christmas. And then if it's not working, we'll put in for an annual review and we'll set the ball in motion again." And that's exactly what happened. So he started in September. He was on a reduced timetable of um, an hour a day for so long. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, right, you're in full time. And that's where it went wrong, because they didn't transition it over a long period of time. It was
It's
right,
like too much too soon.
yeah, too much too soon. Right, let's get him in. And from there, he just completely just failed. Like, it just wasn't the right setting. He was getting himself suspended. He was not taking part in lessons. He was running around the buildings. He was pouring water all over the floor. The staff members were saying that at one point, like, he was attacking the staff members. It just completely went to pot. So we had to put him for an early annual review. And at that point, the school was saying, like, this isn't the right setting for him. He needs to be in either a resource or in a specialist. But again, the council was like, no, we think it's going to work. You're not doing a reasonable adjustments. He needs to stay in that setting. And it was a battle then. It was a battle with school, it was battle with the council. Like, they were saying one thing, the council was saying another. And again, all at the centre of that was Lucas, who
Yeah.
really struggling. Like, didn't have consistent one-to-ones, and that was causing the issue because he didn't get given the same person. And emails after emails, and I kept saying to the school, like, this is what you need to do, like, but they weren't taking on board what I was saying. So they were just doing it their way, which was then causing more problems. Lucas was becoming really dysregulated, started becoming more violent at home. Like, at one point he tried breaking my car windows because he was punching them. We were getting attacked. He was taking it out on his younger sister, and it just all basically just failed. And again, I had to put him for a tribunal because the council wouldn't back down. The council was saying schools are not putting in enough reasonable adjustments in. So I put him for a tribunal again because I was like, right, we need him out of this school because he wasn't even doing any lessons. So it was actually pointless him being in the building. And the tribunal was arranged for November, so we had a long process to go from December until November. So we were kind of like stuck in limbo. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, it was all, again, like I said, suspensions. He just kept getting himself suspended. And then we'd go for our meetings. And then it'd be like, right, we'll do this. And then they'd do it. But then the next day they wouldn't do it. And like I say, Lucas was being impacted by it until it got to the point, I think it was around about, it was after they went back in September. yeah, it was after they went back in September. So we'd had the 6 weeks holiday in the UK, and Lucas went back, and on the first day, he got himself suspended. And in that total, in that first term, it was just around about 14.5 days. And it was just under. So basically, if a child is suspended in a period for more than 15 days, the council have to step in. So because it
Right.
was just slightly under, the council didn't have to do anything because it was just under that threshold. So it got to 14.5 days. And on this one particular day, my phone, I mean, it became part of the norm. Like, my phone was constantly ringing from school. And my phone, I'd literally it'd gone to school at 8:30. By 9 o'clock, my phone's ringing. You're going to have to come and get him. We can't do, he's running around buildings, he's pouring water on everybody. He's hurting people. You're going to have to come and get him. And I remember going in to go find him. And on this one particular occasion, he was so dysregulated to the point where he was shaking. He didn't even know who I was. He swore at
Gosh.
me because he didn't realize it was me, and all he was trying to do, it was almost like a trapped animal, a caged animal trying to get out. And he was trying to
Right.
get out of the building, and they'd locked him in the canteen. And that's what had done it. They'd locked him in the canteen to try and minimize where he could go. He's managed to get out because one of the other teachers didn't realize that's what they were doing. They opened the PE door. He'd managed to get out, and Lucas was on a mission of just, he was running, like he was just running. And I had to go get him. And like I said, he was that shaken. And it was at that point I made the decision, and I just said, look, I can't continue like this because it was taking over my life. I couldn't attend and be present for my daughter because I didn't know when my phone was going to ring. I didn't know like
Right.
how many days he was going to be suspended, and or like how I was going to go find him. And I decided at that point, and I was like, look, I can't continue like this. So I think going forward, is there a way that we can do something where he doesn't have to come to school? It's not marked down that I'm really taking him out, and he's not like being absent, because obviously I didn't want to get fined.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
I needed something where I could, he didn't have to be in the setting. And then the head teacher agreed, and she said now, because it was marked as detrimental, they was the words that she used, detrimental to the other children's well-being and education and the staff members, they would agree to it. So basically, I don't know what it went down as, but they agreed for me to just keep him off at home. They gave me work packs for him to do at home, which I said to them, like, he wouldn't access because Lucas likes to do things like game wise, so like BBC Bite Size or Top Max, anything that's got games in, Lucas will like
Yeah.
to do. So it's all like learning and stuff. Um, so they agreed to do that, and they said that's fine. Obviously, we'll have to let the council know, and they'll have to sign it off. But we're happy for you to keep him as he is until the tribunal, and then you get a decision, and hopefully you'll get him into a specialist setting. And that's what we did. And I think it was at that point where I felt a sense of relief, because I was
Yeah.
like, no more phone calls, no more being on edge. Like, it got to a point where I'd used to dread picking up my phone because I just knew that it was going to be, oh, can you come and get him? Or he's done this today. And like being on edge from him coming home from school because he was so dysregulated, like it just caused mental chaos within the family.
Yeah.
Nobody knew like what it was going to be like with him. Um, and after, when he came out, things were just much calmer. And then, like I say, we had the tribunal, and that's when I felt a massive sense of relief that I got him into a specialist setting. And since
Good.
he's been there, I mean, we have had these challenges, and we're not fully there again because the council have now, at this moment in time, taken off his one to one and also put him onto a full time timetable. So we're now having challenges again, but he's been for his haircutting today, and I think this is the first time in around about 6 years that he's actually spoken to the hairdresser.
Oh,
And today she actually just said, like, oh my God, like, where's that come from? And I'm like, that's because the setting that he's at saw that Lucas struggles with anxiety, and they've
yeah,
put something in place for him to understand what anxiety looks like and the tools and techniques to be able to do that. And that's something that mainstream should have done with him, and they never did.
yeah. It must be so confusing for them as well with their little heads and little brains and like not understand why their brain is making them do this and why like because surely he doesn't want to run around a building, he doesn't want to lash out. Same with my niece, she doesn't want to lash out, she doesn't want to be upset. So it must be so confusing for them to then be like, well, why is my
Hmm.
body doing this to me, why am I feeling like this, and not know how to answer it, and nobody really knows how to answer it.
Yeah. And I think that's, as a parent as well, I think that's one of the massive struggles that we struggle with because we can't see
Yeah,
what's inside their head, and we don't know what they're thinking or what they're, you know, believing, or we don't know what they need. And I think it's
yeah,
even more difficult when you've got a child that's non-verbal, because they can only communicate obviously like using pecs, or they can only communicate using like pointing, and it's very difficult. And I've always remembered that when I was getting the advice from West Yorkshire ADHD, and I've had advice from like places like called Sendias, they kept saying to me like all behaviour is a form of communication.
yeah,
And that's when that it started to open my eyes, and I was like, and it was almost like you've got to kind of like unpick it. And one of the good things that I learned was it's called the star analogy. So it's about it, at the top, it's the setting, and then it's the trigger, then it's the action, and then it's the result.
okay,
So it's about looking at the bigger picture. It's almost like you've kind of got to zoom out. So obviously, what we have to do then as a parent, and this is what one of the things that I try to educate the St Wilfrids on, is about looking at the start, because the behaviour isn't just about the behaviour, it's about the bigger picture. It's like looking at an iceberg. So what they see at the top of the iceberg is obviously the behaviour. It's the hurting
yeah,
the staff members, it's the running around, it's the pouring the water. But what they don't see is underneath the iceberg of, okay, so what could have caused that? What's happened? So what I started to do was basically do their job for them to try and understand and unpick, like, okay, so like what's gone on. So we start with the trigger, because obviously I knew, no, I didn't know what the trigger was, sorry. I started with like the result. So the result was, okay, how he came home that night. So he came home that night and he's tried to punch my car windows through. Obviously he was really angry and he was swearing at me, because when Lucas is angry he swears. He was really angry at me, he was really swearing at me. And then the result then was that I got a little bit upset because, you know, it was impacting me and it was impacting Madison. So then it's almost like you've got to kind of like dissect it. And then
yeah,
the thing with Lucas as well is that he doesn't give. So I don't know whether or not it's like part of their ADHD brain, and like they only remember certain snippets of information, which again is why you rely on school. We rely on
yeah,
school for communication to be like, right, okay, let's fill in the dots. Because basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a jigsaw. But then when you've only got like maybe 3 or 4 pieces from the child, because that's all they can remember because they were so dysregulated, they don't remember anything else. We need to get the rest of the jigsaw pieces, which makes it very difficult when you've then got a school setting that isn't the right setting, and they don't understand like the bigger picture. It's really hard to
yeah,
put together. So I remember like trying to unpick this behavior, and then it was in like piecing it all back together. So I remember him saying like, well, it was too warm in the classroom, so that went at the top. So this is the
right,
setting. So this isn't the start, this isn't the trigger, this isn't what set him off, this is the setting. So I remember him saying, like, well, it was warm in the classroom. So I'm like, right, okay, so you know, so well, okay, well, tell me a little bit more, Lucas. And he's like, well, I don't know. Then kids started annoying me. Okay. right, we're getting progress here, so kids are annoying him.
Yeah.
And then he dropped it in that somebody were in his class that shouldn't be in his class. Right, okay, let's add that into the picture. And already we're starting to build a picture of like what's gone on. So we get to the bit where the trigger is. And the trigger was because his one-to-one didn't come at the time that she said he was gonna come.
Right.
That was the
Right.
trigger. So it had all this build up. So they like to imagine it like spoons. So the spoon analogy, I don't know if you've heard of this, but the spoon
No.
analogy is basically everybody starts, whether you're a child or whether or not you're an adult, you start with 10 spoons each day. And when you've got these spoons, basically it's your resilience. So if something happens during your day, like maybe you miss your bus, well, you've probably lost 2 spoons on that. Something else happens, like I don't know, maybe they haven't got your favourite food at school, so that's you've lost another 2 spoons. So now we're down to six. We're down to 6 spoons. And throughout your day, things are going to happen because life is going to life.
Yeah.
So this spoon analogy is basically to keep replenishing your spoons. So what you don't want to do is run out of spoons by the end of the day, because if you've run out of spoons, not even at the end of the day, even if you've run out of spoons at like 10 o'clock in the morning, your resilience is gone. So
Yeah.
then if somebody says to you, like, actually, you're working an hour late after work, boom, you've gone because you've got no spoons left.
Yes.
So it's about replenishing your spoons. So, like, what can you do in that moment to get those spoons back? And it's even more important as a parent because you're already running on empty, you're already having those struggles of daily life. So, getting your spoons back is like really, really important. So, obviously, by this point for Lucas, when he's here with the setting, he's already started losing some of his spoons, and then we've got to the trigger, and because his one-to-ones told him to meet him at the door at maybe like 1 o'clock, and she's not turned up till 1:05, well, that's a trigger for Lucas in itself because he's
Right.
got really bad anxiety. And also, Lucas is very, very black and white of, if you said that time, you need to be there at that time. So why were you not there at that time? So then obviously then that's then led to the action of, well, he's just run off. He's run off, he didn't want to wait for you. But then obviously then as a result, we've had the all out bursts at home, and it's also then impacted at school. So
Right.
that's why it's so important. And I'm lucky now that he's in a specialist setting and they understand all of this. So they very much work with me and they're like, right, look, Lucas has refused to come into school today. Like, do you happen to know, like, has he said anything with you? And I'm like, well, do you know what? Funnily enough, yesterday you did say to me that you weren't going to let him out on a break. And they were like, well, we didn't say that he weren't allowed out on a break. We just told him that he was allowed out, but it had to be a different time. I'm like, well, he's
Right.
probably not heard that. He's probably listened to half the conversation and then zoned out and heard you just say he's not allowed out. And then because I was able to then piece the other part of their puzzle, they was then able to go out and just say to Lucas, Lucas, do you think it's because you're not allowed out? And then he's answered and gone, yeah.
Right.
So that's why it's so important that you can connect the dots. And unfortunately, mainstream don't do that because it's not. I don't know whether or not it's they don't want to fully understand the picture, or it's like the resources, like they haven't got the time to ring parents to find out that information, or whether or not
Yeah.
it's just seen that the child is just being naughty and they don't want to be basically seen that they're treating the child differently to any other
Right.
child. And if they were doing
Right.
that, that's got no additional needs, they wouldn't have that same, they would
Yeah.
have the punishment, and obviously that other child wouldn't. But obviously that's where it's wrong because every child is different and they should be given reasonable adjustments.
Yeah. I 100% agree. You mentioned that like quite early on in our conversation about parenting classes and different resources and things that you found for yourself.
Hmm.
How did you find those? Was it just a lot of research yourself to find those, or were they? Was it quite easy to find that support and help?
No, not at all. And I think that's the other thing that I've struggled with navigating because very much so when you're given the diagnosis of your child's got autism and ADHD, it's right, there you go, see you later. And
Right.
it's a bit like, again, this is what I mentioned, it's very isolating, because it's like, right, okay, oh, what do I do now? Like, you've got this diagnosis, which you think is going to be like this wonderful thing because you've spent all this time waiting for it, and you think it's going to be the answer to unlocking all these doors. But then it's like, all right, okay, I don't actually know what to do with this.
Right.
So a lot of the information that I found out is either through like just researching. So I found out that you could do your level 2 in autism and ADHD. You can do that online, and some courses allow you to do it for free. So that
Okay.
was my first point. So that's where I started, because I wanted to understand Lucas a little bit more, to work out like what's going on in his brain, and like how could I do things differently. So that was the first part of it, doing that. And then the next part of it was then, right, okay, like I'm going to have a look now and see if there's anything on Facebook that I can find, like with communities that have got similar children to, obviously, to Lucas. And that's what I started doing there. And then it was more or less through other people, really, that I started
Okay.
finding out about, West Yorkshire ADHD support group. I found out about SENDIAS. I found out about local offer. So local offer, if you go online, and it shows you and navigates you to where different things are that you can apply for. And through there, I then found out that you can get a max card. Not many people know about that. So a max card is basically, it offers you, sometimes as a carer, but mainly the child, like discounts on different attractions and different places that you can go. I then found out that you can get a CEA card, which is for the carer to go free to the cinema with a child. So the
Okay.
child just needs to be over 8, but the carer can go for free. And then when I went to one of the courses, so there was a course that I found out about, I think it was through, again, just searching on Facebook. Um, that was like a bit of like an overhaul of like mental health and about ADHD. And I went to that course on my own, and I started learning about, other things that I can access. And then I started learning about IPSY. So IPSY is about, legalities. So if you think that a school isn't doing enough reasonable adjustments, or your school is suspending for unauthorized things that they shouldn't be suspending about, so like anything legal, you can go to the IPSY website, and they cover quite a lot of things, and they can give you advice, and it's free advice as well, which was really interesting. So that's the way that I've been able to do it. And again, for me, it's been more like word of mouth and finding out from other people about, oh, you can apply for, like, there's a family fund. Again, not many people know about that. So it's like the family fund is where, if your child's got an EHCP and they've got DLA that you usually get, and they've got quite a high need, basically they can apply for different things. So it could be maybe the child needs like sensory equipment, it could be they've not been able to go on a holiday, so you can apply for up to £500 to go for a short break holiday, and they will then approve as those people that they feel that it would benefit from.
That's really good. Those kind of things. That's definitely beneficial for
Mm,
you and for the kids.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have like a good support system around you that helps you in things, and even just like people to talk to help your mental health?
So I have my sister, so I'm quite close with my sister, and she's also got two children that, well, one of them's been diagnosed. And again, this is where it's the different, because Leon, again, because he wasn't academically behind, he didn't cause any scenes at school. He was very much the quiet child in class, to the point where a child actually stabbed him with a pencil once in the leg, and he just sat there. He didn't say anything, and he went home and obviously had the mental outburst at home. And that's when my sister was like, he's just allowed a girl to stab him fully in the leg and not done anything about it. And that's when school was a bit like, right, okay. And then they set the ball in motion of the autism referral, because, like I said, he was very quiet at school. So I've got my sister. She really understands. I've got my mum and dad, but my mum and dad don't. I think because they're from that generation where they don't really get it, so it's a little bit hard. So it's a bit like, oh well, I'm going through X, Y, and Z right now, Dad. And my dad's like, well, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know what to advise you
Right.
because I've not been through that. So more or less, it's like accessing like support groups of those that do actually get it. I use mainly West Yorkshire
Right.
ADHD and Wakefield Parent Carer Forums are the ones really that I mainly access and send yes. And really for my own mental health, like I do a lot of journaling, I do a lot of walking, I do a lot of working out, I listen to music, I try and find things um that I'm passionate about, and I like to push myself a little bit more. And if I can, like parenting courses, I love parenting courses because I love learning, but also it gives you the
Yeah.
opportunity to like meet other people as well that are on the same journey.
Yeah. And do you know what? I know this is a bit off topic, but that's one of the reasons why I did the podcast because I love learning and learning other people's stories and perspectives and meeting people is just so much that brings me so much joy. And I genuinely feel that every day is a school day, whether you've got a kid that needs extra love and attention or not, you will know somebody in
Mm.
your life or friendship group who is going through something like this, and a little bit more of an understanding goes a long way.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's so nice to be able to connect with people who are going through different things that I may or may not experience, but I will be able to learn how to help my sister or be there for her or a friend or whatever. So firstly, thank you very much for coming to talk to me.
That's okay. Thank
um
you for having me.
do you have any advice for anyone who is just at the beginning of this journey or partway through with their own kids or with their own friends?
Yeah, absolutely. So trust your gut is my main advice. Don't allow anybody to tell you that they don't think your child has got autism or ADHD or any other special educational need because you're the parent, you know them better than anybody else. So even if people don't agree with what you're doing, like when I went for an EHCP for my child and I was going through a tribunal, the head teacher at that school told me not to bother and I was wasting my time. They said there was no way that Lucas would ever get into a specialist setting because he wasn't at a specialist setting already. So he told me not to bother. So I'm glad I ignored his advice because
Yeah.
obviously if I'd listened to him, like Lucas wouldn't be in a specialist setting now. So my main advice would be trust your gut. My other main advice would be to not be afraid and reach out to those that are also finding your community. I think like-minded people, because when Lucas got diagnosed, I was in a friendship group, and I think this was the hardest part really for me because obviously we all, we're human beings, we all strive for connection, we all want friendships, but it's about who you're hanging around with as well, and that can really impact you. So being mindful
Yeah.
of who you are allowing in your circle. Um, like I say, when Lucas got diagnosed, I was in a friendship group, and obviously it was, I don't like using the word normal. It was the mums that didn't have SEN children, so they had
Right.
they didn't have stereotypical children. Um, they did have stereotypical children. We have neurodiverse children, so they don't get it. So a lot of the times, and I was being triggered because their struggles are not the same as our struggles. And unless somebody is in the same boat and walking in your shoes, nobody really has a clue what you're going
Yeah.
through. And being in the wrong circle opens you up to criticism, it opens you up to judgment, but it also makes you feel that you're failing as a parent because obviously their struggles of their child not getting 10 out of 10 in a spelling test are not the same struggles that we're experiencing, because
No.
the struggle that we might be experiencing is actually getting the child to school that day. And for us, a win is that they're actually in class. that could be our win. So we're not worrying about, oh, they've not got 10 out of 10 out of a spelling test. Um, we're worrying that, we're just trying to do our best. We're just trying to get the child into school. And that in itself can be a challenge and a battle. So I think having the right support, having the right community, um, being mindful who you take opinions from and you take advice from, I would say as well, like, because not everybody's going to understand. My dad was a pure example of that. I remember telling my dad that Luke's had been diagnosed with autism, and he said, obviously he was really uneducated at the time, but he said, oh, he'll grow out of it. And obviously he won't, because it's a condition. And I think the more that my dad has really got to understand Lucas and to see his struggles. I mean, obviously, Lucas at 5 was presenting completely different to what he is now. And I think my dad has more of it, a bit of understanding of, actually, no, he won't just grow out of it. It might get easier as they get older, because they can learn to, adapt. But obviously, they're not going to ever grow out of autism. And that's what made me laugh about that. that thing that's come out about, oh, children are going to have autism if the parents took paracetamols, is absolute a load of nonsense.
Yeah, it's absolute rubbish.
Absolute rubbish, because your child is going to be born with autism or ADHD. It's a genetic condition. Um, and, that's why, I mean, I'm in the process of being tested for ADHD myself. And that's come basically as part of, okay, I've now got Madison, who's on the spectrum for ADHD and autism. Lucas has already been diagnosed. My niece is now on the spectrum as well. So she's been identified with ADHD. And obviously, my nephew's got autism. So it's like, okay, somebody then mentioned, maybe you've got ADHD as well. And obviously I started looking into the symptoms of that. It's like, yeah, I probably have. But I think because going through life, it's not been very well. You were just labelled the naughty kid,
Yeah.
or you talk too much in class. Emma would do more if she actually applied herself into lesson rather than talking to a friend next door. If she applied herself more, she'd be further along. And that's what I was labelled. I was always labelled the, she talks too much, she's being too much, and I never fit in at school. And it's not through a lack of, I always felt as if there was something wrong with me, but actually, it was just simply because, I may or may not have ADHD. And I feel like there's definitely really a lack of awareness. And I mean, we
Yeah.
have made progress throughout the years, but we're nowhere near. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. And with more and more people now coming forward, hence the waiting times,
Yeah.
it's added to the waiting times. But it's now good that people are recognizing it and being like, actually, maybe, yeah, we're hearing it now. Like, loads of middle-aged people are now getting diagnosed because nobody knew what to look out for. Like, now, if I go back to my old high school, like, they've got a SEN department. They've got like a room where, it's
Yeah.
like a sensory. Well, I never had that. If it was recognized with me that, actually, I'm swinging on my chair, or I'm talking to the person next to me because actually I've zoned out and I've not really understood what you've asked me to do, I probably would have been a lot further ahead, and I wouldn't have got
Yeah.
myself into trouble. But obviously, we are making progress, but we're not as far as we need to be. And I feel like there definitely needs to be more around awareness, and especially like with teachers, and recognizing that with children, and like putting things in place to really help our children thrive. Because unfortunately, I feel a lot of parents are put in the position of homeschooling, not because they want to, because the
It's
child
the
is
only option.
forced
Yeah.
out of education. Because you're either, you're battling against the school, you're battling against the council, and ultimately all you want is the best for your child. So I
Yeah.
feel a lot of the population now are homeschooling for that reason.
Yeah. And it's not fair. It's really not. They I could talk to you for hours and hours about this. It's just it's. I really enjoy being educated and learning new things, like I say, and the whole it's the paracetamol fault. Ugh, autism and ADHD was diagnosed before paracetamol was even properly regulated and, you know, invented. So it's it's just stupid, and these people who say that or believe that are just
Mm,
absolutely drives me insane. And again, it's another way of gaslighting the parents to say it's their fault,
absolutely.
and it's always the parents' fault, and it's not. It's really not. Um, have I missed anything that you think might be important before I let you go?
I don't think you have. I think we've pretty much covered it, haven't we? I think the only thing again is like if you have got a child, it's never too excuse me, it's never too late. Like even if like you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, oh God, I wish I'd have done something about it, because the amount of people that don't fight and they don't go to tribunals is crazy.
Yeah,
Because I get it, it's overwhelming, it's a lot to deal with, but once you've done one, like I've now done three. It's easy. Like once you know like how the process and what to do, and very much so. It's easy, but also throughout that you're growing yourself. Like you're
yeah,
growing
yeah,
confidence, because there's probably this time last year I probably wouldn't have even said like, oh yeah, I'll do a podcast. But coming on here is nothing compared to sitting. I mean, it was done via a camera on the laptop, but being in front of a judge and like three other people is daunting, especially when you
yeah.
don't know what they're going to ask, or and as well, I think that TV programs really represent it wrong. Like they made it
Yes,
out, like they make it out like, oh, they're gonna, you're a liar, and and it's nothing like that whatsoever. And 95%, this is the statistic that I learned, 95% of tribunals go in the parents' favour.
oh,
So
okay.
if you are listening to this podcast and you're umming and ahhing whether or not that's not a right setting for me, but I'm a bit afraid to actually go to the tribunal, absolutely do it, because 95% of cases are won by the parent, because the judges are lovely. Like I've had three different ones, and each time the judges listen to me, giving me the platform to say, right, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what I think. And yeah, absolutely, they give the council the same platform to say what they think as well. But they do put the child first. They do listen to what, and especially if you can get the child's voice heard, even if it's just on a piece of paper and they've just drawn a picture of how they are feeling, like the judge takes that into consideration. And
Oh, that's good.
ultimately, it's the child's voice that is most important. So that I wouldn't allow, what anybody else thinks or what anybody else says, or, your own fear, like stop you, because you have to be your advocate for your child. Like they
Yeah,
can't do it for themselves, and
right.
you have to be the one to do it. And I feel like that is a lot of pressure, but I think if it was the other way around, and if it was you and your parents, I'm sure you would want your parents to do the best for you, and that you'd want them to fight for you, and that they would want what's best for you. And I feel
Yeah,
like it's got to be the same. Like I want the best for my children, and I'll fight tooth and nail for my children to make sure, like I say, I'm doing it in EHCP for Madison at the moment, and I'll make sure that she's given one, and even if they say no to me, I'll appeal it, because I know, and again, it comes down to the parent's judgment. You know your child better than anyone else. So don't allow anybody else to say, oh, you're wasting someone's time, or there's no way that they're going to get a diagnosis of ADHD or autism. There's no, excuse me, there's no way that you're going to get a place in a specialist or resource. You're just wasting your time, because they don't know. They're not God. They haven't got a crystal ball and they can like look into it and be like, oh yes, I can see on this day that this person isn't. No, they're just using their own perception, and they're just using their own judgment, and probably their own trauma of maybe something
yeah.
that they've gone through. So absolutely fight and get what's right for your children. And if you are know that you're entitled to something, like make sure you get it for them, because you owe it to them.
Thank you so much.
No,
I,
thank
I
you.
genuinely have I genuinely have learned a lot, and what I'm going to do after the podcast finishes is get as many links and resources off you as I can, and I'll get them attached to this episode. So anyone who is still listening, I will get those to you as well. Um, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I have actually created a PDF for 5 steps for those mums who are feeling very overwhelmed and like they feel like they've lost their identity, because I get it, it's a massive journey that we go on, and it's so easy to lose who we are. But at the end of the day, again, it comes back to the spoons, it comes back to you weren't always a mum. And if you want to be in the best position to get what's right for your child, you have to be in the best possible space that you can be. So I have actually created a free PDF that includes like all the steps that I've taken, and with some of the resources on there as well that I actually went out and I went and obviously started following and contacting. So I have actually included that.
Awesome. Let me send me the link to that as well. I'll get that, or
Mhm.
wherever you have it, I'll get that available for people as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
send it to you.
awesome. Thank you. So anyone who is still listening, thank you for being here, and until next time.